It's time now for the look at today's international newspapers, and press reviewer Elena Casas is with us for that. So what's hitting the headlines today?
Well, look at this Guardian front page, Lorna. There's a very large number on it with 12 zeros. That is $1 trillion, and that, according to The Guardian, is what it will cost Europe if Greece pulls out of the euro. Now, they say shockwaves would spread all around Europe. It's not just the case that banks would have to write off the money that they've lent to Greece that they now would have to assume they won't get back. It's also that the bond yields of Italy, Spain and bailed out Ireland and Portugal we can expect to spiral, and so all Europe's banks are much more exposed to those countries. Banks here in France are very exposed to Greek and Spanish, but Spanish and Portuguese banks, for example. So they would have to bring those costs of those spiralling bond yields into play, if you like. They also report in The Guardian that Greek consumers have taken €3 billion in cash out of their banks in the last 10 days since their election. That's to say about a third of all the money that was in Greek bank accounts a month ago has now been taken out in cash. Now, of course, that is essentially what you call a run on a bank, even though they do have enough cash, the Greek banks, to run for about 3 or 4 months, according to our business desk. That is nevertheless an awful lot of money to take out. So then you look at the real possibility that Greece might be forced out of the euro, not only the things that its government does, but literally because its banks could run out of cash euros to give anyone, and then the European Central Bank could refuse to give them any more, because why throw good money after bad, if you like. The Independent, on its front page, focuses on the speculators that could be making money out of a Greek exit. They call them vulture funds on the Independent front page. Essentially, the Greek government has concluded that the last thing it needs now is to have to get into a legal battle with hedge funds to whom it owes money. And so yesterday, for example, the Greek government paid out €400 million to a US tax exile living in the Bahamas to stop him from suing, essentially, to get that money back from them. The Independent on the inside explains that Greece doesn't really have the money, of course, to pay these speculators, but they reckon a legal battle would be even more expensive.
Okay, and what about in Greece itself? What are the newspapers saying there?
Well, Katimerini, which is a fairly moderate paper in its views, they backed the memorandum, of course, which brought EU and IMF inspectors to go searching through the Greek government's accounts. They say that PASOK and New Democracy, the mainstream parties in Greece, have completely failed to rise to the occasion, and as a result, there might be what they expect Syriza, the extreme left party, to do best in the next round of elections, which has, of course, now been scheduled for the 17th of June. Now, who are Syriza? There's an extremely cruel, really, and biting article about them in the New York Times today. They say since the time of Pericles, Greeks have rushed to embrace charismatic demagogues like lemmings throwing themselves into the sea. Now, this New York Times writer calls Alexis Tsipras, who is the leader of Syriza, a Pied Piper, a rabble-rouser with keen political instincts and few scruples. Now, Tsipras, of course, reckons that Greece can stay in the euro even without following all of the austerity measures that it's meant to be imposed on it. Now, the New York Times says that's about as likely as snow in Athens in July. It's impossible, and Tsipras should realise that if he is elected and Greece as a result pulls out of the euro, it'll only be speculators and profit hunters, the people his left-wing party is supposedly opposed to, that will profit from it. The Economist today has headlined its editorial for its part, going, gone. They reckon that the ECB, the European Central Bank, might already be limiting the amount of cash euros it's prepared to give to Greek banks because they're worried that the slow hiss of capital leakage, as the Economist calls it, from Greece might be the real problem. Greece has no money. Greek consumers might start hoarding cash in their mattresses, something Greeks are famous for doing already. So the system may just completely run out of money.
Okay, well, moving on, but staying with the American press, there are reports there that they are supplying Syrian dissidents with weapons.
Briefly, this is from the Washington Post. Now, they say that Syrian dissidents are being supplied with weapons in an effort being coordinated by the US. Now, the US, of course, has strongly denied in public it will supply Syrian dissidents with weapons. Now, these arms, supposedly, according to the Washington Post, are being supplied by Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They're being passed to the Muslim Brotherhood and other opposition groups in Syria, who reckon they have got some big shipments into the country. That's what they tell the paper. But, of course, the US authorities haven't admitted coordinating this.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Elena, for that look at some of the big international stories in today's newspapers.